Call meeting to order.
Okay, at this time, I'd ask Jennifer to take roll.
Chris Freeman,
Oh.
Mark Stillman,
Here.
Tanya Murphy, here. Clint Moses,
Here.
Carl Palmer,
Here.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Here.
Charlie Schneider,
Here.
Andy Skillings, here. David Steyer.
Here, we have a quorum to conduct business. The meeting was properly noticed. We'll move on to agenda order approval and revision. I did receive a request from Amy on item 3D to move the director and the admin portion of that discussion to closed session.
That is correct.
Correct. Is there any objection to that? Okay, we'll plan on doing that then. Under agenda order approval revision, is there anything else? Charlie?
I'd like to suggest that we move 5A in front of 3B.
So move the closed section up before the approval of the Sdma salary wage schedules and contracts.
Right.
Anybody opposed to that? Okay, we'll do that as well. When we do get to that, just for the people that are here, when we get to that, we'll have to clear the room for a bit and then invite everyone back in when we're done. So we apologize for the inconvenience in advance. Okay, recommendations and accommodations, we have none for tonight. Community communications, I do have two of them up here. The comments of the people in the school district of the Menomonie area are encouraged and appreciated by the board and administrators. Education is a partnership with the schools, parents, and taxpayers, all being important participants. This is the time to air concerns and express your opinion on issues. There should be no negative personal attacks against any individuals, including staff, board members, or administrators. Please indicate if you would like the board president to direct a member of the administration to respond to your concerns. Communication, when you speak, clearly state your name, your municipality, and we'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Our first person to speak tonight is Josie Pillman. On deck will be Jason Collins. Josie, you can just stand in the middle tonight, so.
Okay. Board members and Dr. Zajdowski, when you bake a loaf of bread, one of the ingredients you use is a leaven like yeast. A small amount begins to permeate the whole loaf. It leavens the whole batch. A bad idea in a school district can do the same thing. What might start small and of no apparent significance can permeate the whole district, community, and culture. I'm sad to say that this is what has happened in our school district. The bad idea is the LGBTQ+ agenda. The educators have been allowed to put doubt into the minds of very young children. Maybe you can't know what you are. Maybe you should question your sexual identity. The truth is, no one can ever change their birth assigned gender and should never even be given the suggestion that they can. This bad idea in our educational system has permeated through the school districts, up to the institutions of higher learning, and even up to the law schools. So now we have a Supreme Court Justice candidate, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who cannot define a woman. We are asking her to apply law in our country at the highest level, and she cannot get the most basic tenet of human sexuality right. Do we trust her to judge justly? This bad idea has permeated the whole educational system. I believe we can do better. I believe we at the Sdma can be leaders in killing this leaven at the lowest levels before it permeates the whole district. First, we must identify the lie, the bad idea. Then we must speak the truth with compassion and love. We take this bad idea and we ban it from the whole loaf. It will always come back. Keep purging. We must be vigilant to purge it from the entire district. Bake the truth into the system. If a student presents themselves with this lie or bad idea, we must give them truthful counsel. Remember, this is not just a psychological issue, it's also a spiritual one. When Tony is counseling such gender-confused students, she would do well to get help from the clergy who are trained to deal with the root cause of such confused thinking. Expose the lie, purge the bad idea in love. Set these students up on an upright path. Spread that kind of good leaven. Students are immature, impressionable minors who are influenced strongly by their peers. The educators in our district will serve them well to set them on a right path. Our school district would lead rightly to have a policy regarding gender identity, bathroom and locker use, etc., that teaches the truth and does not intimidate or punish teachers for counseling truth with compassion and love. Then we as a school district can be a leader and an example, even influencing surrounding school districts for good. So I again encourage you to take a serious look at the Sdma gender policy plan. Remember, a little leaven leavens the whole loaf. We dare not let bad ideas ruin the whole batch. Let's bake good ideas into our policies, that we might graduate students of character who are lifelong learners and who can form healthy and moral families in our community. I'd like the administration to address this. You say we can say that at the end. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker.
Well, I just wanted to address a point of order on some of the content that we put into our community forum. And I really appreciate a lot of the care that you put into your words, and you actually are really well spoken, and sometimes I think you're humorous. I appreciate that sometimes too. But there's some other things that we have to think about, and there's some larger cultural changes that are going on that a lot of people maybe don't agree with, but I just worry that our children are getting caught in the crossfire. So we need to distinguish between Sdma policy and our students. And sometimes I think you get confused in this when you're making your addresses to the board. And one of our most important jobs is to protect our students, all of our students. And sometimes I think the words that you believe are chosen with love to correct, they have effects that maybe do otherwise. And so tonight we talked a little bit about like lies, a little bit of which ways that kids aren't following the truth. And I think that we need to be careful about distinguishing between what children are doing based upon the choices that are given them, and they're trying honestly and their best to equip themselves based on what's before them, and then we don't pull the rug out underneath them if they make choices that disagree with their kind of social or cultural values. So in addition to some of these things you brought up before, I just don't know if you're aware of some of the implications of some of the things that you say about students. Ridiculous, immoral, indecent, irrational, perverted, without sense, without judgment, not knowing right from wrong, evil, immoral, perverted sexuality, deceitful. And so I can appreciate that you believe that some of the district policies are those things. When you speak, you often refer to students in those ways. And we have to be very careful that they don't get caught up in a war that isn't about them. So I would hope that I agree with a lot of the things that you say, and I believe we could be constructive, especially about building bathrooms, giving parents the option to opt out of curriculum. I mean, if we got $3 million for a sports stadium, we got some money to build some bathrooms, especially in K through 8, where they aren't as prevalent as they are in high school situation. So I just think that if you focus on what the district is doing and what the district can do, I would be happy to partner with you on some things that could really make real effects on how our kind of cultural realities work in our schools, but just leave the kids out of it. Does that seem fair?
Okay. Our second speaker, Jason Collins.
Hello, I'm Jason Collins, parent of a student who was in the district, lived in the city of Menomonie, and I'm a teacher in the district for 20 years. I love my job. I love the students I teach. Our district motto is to prepare all And it's capital ALL, students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. All means LGBTQ students. They want and deserve a safe place to be themselves with dignity and respect. LGBTQ kids belong to one of the most vulnerable populations. These kids are more likely, 3 times more likely to commit suicide. Federal courts have held Title IX requires schools to recognize these students as protected class, bullying and correcting this harassment. I'm here. My students come to me today showing me on their phones these 9 statements. Devastated, afraid, scared. How can they learn? I don't know how to help these students become learners when they're scared, when they're afraid. So I'm coming to you to help. These students deserve to learn. These students deserve to be in a safe place. And those statements make it not for them. And I know this district wants to stand behind that of all students. So please help me, help them. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our community communications for tonight. Moving on to item 2A, personnel consent agenda. Action to approve the personnel consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Carl, is there a second?
I'll second.
Charlie? Any questions or discussion? Okay, Jennifer, let's go. No pressure. I'm not gonna touch it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Try now.
There we go.
So Carl made the motion and a second by Charlie.
Correct.
So we'll update the record after. It's right off the Charlie. That's one.
Okay, motion carries by unanimous vote. Move on to the action item, 3A. Consider and take action for prepayment of a portion of the taxable convertible to tax exempt geo refunding bonds dated 12/2/2020. Dr. Zadowski, well, I guess we first ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Clint, is there a second? Mark, discussion? Dr. Joe.
I'm not sure how much time the board wants to spend on this, but Leah can answer as many questions as you'd like. But essentially what we're doing is we're taking The funds that were generated through our previous refinancing, making an earlier payment, which will allow our school district taxpayers to realize a savings of $238,442 in future interest cost reduction. This does not provide more money for the district budget. This is Fund 39, this is long-term debt, but by making this prepayment, we're able to save that interest cost in the future. I do want to point out that, Leah and our advisors at Baird, we continue to keep track of our long-term debt, and I think it's gone really, really well, and we have a listing of the previous refinancings we've done. But when you consider the rates that we were able to sell those bonds, and then the different refinances we've done, and now with this prepayment, we're gonna end up about $7 million less than what the taxpayers approved in 2013. So we are recommending that the board approve this prepayment. Are there any questions at all for me or Leah?
Chris?
I don't know what to do. So when we have extra funds, they can either go into, is it Fund 10? Where we generate the surplus because we're moving excess funds from other funds into that Fund 10, correctly? Correct.
In the normal budget, yes, but this is all separate from that. This is our long-term debt fund.
So there's nothing else we could do with those funds?
Correct.
And they couldn't go anywhere else?
Right.
So we might as well do this.
Right, we
Sounds good.
could save them to the end and pay it off at the end.
Okay.
But because we have a fund balance in Fund 39, we're suggesting that we use that fund balance now and then recoup the interest savings instead of waiting to the end. It's not rocket science.
Got it.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any other questions? Seeing none? Jennifer, let's go. Hey, we got it. Motion passes 9-0 by unanimous vote. Okay, this time we'll take a brief recess. We'll go into closed session. Hopefully it's not too long, and then we will reconvene, so.
I move that we reconsider the salary compensation as it was put forth, and to make a slight adjustment, and that was that we were looking to give the administrative lead team a 3% CPI adjustment, cost of living adjustment, and that we give a 4.7 adjustment to teachers and staff across the board, in addition to their steps. If there's any clarification on that, Clint, would you?
We have a motion, is there a second?
Did you want to include hourly people?
Yes,
And then when you said administration, did you want just superintendents and directors? Did you want
Yes.
principals to be put with a 4.7 and then the superintendent and,
that was my intention.
okay.
So that is your motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Can you read it just one more time with everything? Because I think there was some confusion, at least for the audience, perhaps.
As we discussed in closed session, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but adjust the compensation of district administrator and district directors to 3%. Increase the compensation for teachers to 4.7% in addition to any steps that are currently in place. Any corrections?
And hourly staff.
And hourly staff.
Yeah, I think just to clarify, all other staff. Clint?
All other? Yes, correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any discussion? I think, are we clear that this change will add somewhere around $385,000 to the cost of this, is that correct?
That would be my initial estimate, Dave. Yes.
Any other discussion? I will say that for the integrity of our salary schedule with the teachers and that, I'm going to vote against this. I think that, from my perspective, the way that we have it wrote up in board docs is very similar to what we've done every year, 4.7% CPI increase across the board to all groups. Pay the steps first, the remainder goes to the staff after that. And that's what I still support rather than this option. I think that it creates problems for a district for budgeting and that down the road that other boards and administration is going to have to deal with. So, any other discussion? Charlie?
I guess I would say that I agree with you. I don't like blowing up the salary schedule is essentially what we're doing here. But I don't think that the feeling of the board is there. So even though I agree that it's maybe not the best thing to do, I think it's something we've got to move forward. So
Okay.
I'll go the other way, I guess.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote. We'll just do a roll call vote. Jenny, yeah.
Chris Freeman,
Yes,
Mark Hillman,
Yes.
Tanya Hughesby,
Yes.
Clint Moses,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Yes.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skillings,
Yes.
Dave Steyer.
No. Okay, motion carries by an 8-1 vote. Next item on the agenda, approve summer school staffing incentive program. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Angie, any discussion? Dr. Joe?
I think we already covered this at our last meeting. Are there any questions?
Seeing none, you want to do all the votes? We just have a couple more, so we can do this as a roll call as well. Okay.
Chris Freeman,
Yes.
Mark Hillman,
Yes.
Tanya Hughesby,
Yes.
Clint Moses,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Yes.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skillings,
Yes.
and David Steyer.
Yes, motion approved by unanimous vote, 9-0. Action, item 6C on our revised agenda, approve contract for design services and scope of construction for the MHS Sports Complex, Phase 3. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Angie, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mark, we have a motion and a second, any discussion? Amy?
One concern I have is I was looking through all of the contract, there was a lot to read and go over and look at. And I was just curious about, it seemed like at the bottom, they had so many different things that was gonna be an added expense. Can anyone tell me if we're gonna have all those added expenses? Because if that's the case, it's gonna be a little more than $2.6 million.
Thanks for the question, Amy. The deliverable expenses that they listed they broke it down into 3 major bid packages. The bleacher system and press box, the turf, and then the concessions and restroom building. Now, Point of Beginning will serve as the lead designer, but there are different parts to this that they'll be subcontracting out. And that's where some of those are reimbursable expenses, but all of those are included in the budget. So it's not in addition to, it's part of.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's vote.
Chris Freeman,
No.
Mark Hillman,
Yes.
Tanya Hughesby,
Yes.
Clint Moses,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
No.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skillings,
Yes.
and David Steyer.
Yes, motion carries 7-2. Okay, on the discussion agenda, item A, clerk's report for 2022 school board election. Clint?
All right, thanks, Mr. President. The 2022 school board election will be held Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. 3 seats will be filled for the top 3 vote getters in the spring election. On March 23rd, 2022, David Steyer registered as a write-in candidate for the 2022 school board election. Steyer's name will not appear on the ballot, but the district will notify municipal clerks so write-in votes for David Steyer will be counted. The ballot for the 2022 school board election includes the following candidates: Dominic Stewart, Abraham Smith, Scott Parker, Rachel Henderson, Jennifer Sacre, and Brittany Weicker. That is it.
Thanks, Clint. Okay, next item, discuss 4K programming agreements. Dr. Janowski?
You can see that the programming agreements have not changed at all, with the exception of the CPI being added in for next year. So Mr. Seguin will be working with the 4K providers and with a reimbursement rate that increases 4.7%, pending board approval at our next meeting. Any questions on the provider agreements?
Just Brian, how does that interest change? Because I know in years past, we had a lot of time, we had a lot of discussion with the providers.
Yep, so we follow a similar time frame to review these every year. And when the providers were asked if there were any other areas they wanted to take a look at, nothing came forward other than recommendations of that.
So is that 4.7 standard, or was it higher last year or lower? Or
It was lower. The CPI last year was, I'm trying to go 1.8. 1.8, yeah, so.
The 4K agreements follow the CPI that we do for the rest of the district as well. That's why this year it's 4.7. Any other questions? Okay, we'll bring those back at our next meeting. Item 7C, discuss staffing plan for 2022-2023.
So this is the board's first look at the staffing plan, and we'll be bringing this back for board approval, hopefully at the next meeting. But Just to give you a little bit of a summary, overall, the staffing plan is 13.4 FTE less than it was this year. Most of the reason for the reduction has to do with COVID contingencies not being built into the staffing plan for next year. It does include an additional 1.5 FTE teaching positions and 1.3 FTE paraeducator positions in the area of special education. It also includes an extra classroom teacher for a position at River Heights Elementary due to enrollment, and 1.3 FTE paraeducators at Downsville and Knapp Elementary School. In addition to the base instructional plan, there are 7 FTE positions to still relate to COVID-19 related needs, particularly in the area of math and ELA interventions and health room assistance. There is a reduction in the administration for next year that was actually realized mid-year this year with the change in how the pool and field house and athletic department has been staffed. Overall, it's a reduction of 25 FTE in staffing positions, long-term or full-time subs, sanitizing custodians, and a number of other positions directly related to COVID-19. Any questions or suggestions that the board has for the staffing plan?
Amy?
My question is about the nurse. I see that you're only having 1 nurse, but you're also adding a 3rd health assistant. And I was wondering how that came about because I'm not sure what the health assistants do. It's different than what the nurses do, but I just want to make sure that we're covered for anything that might come up because you might think COVID's over, but it could come back.
Yeah, and if COVID comes back, certainly we'll be bringing proposals to the board. I mean, and I'm not saying COVID coming back probably isn't the right way to say it. If COVID begins to disrupt operations, we may have to come back and ask for additional subs or whatever. But yes, you're correct. We are looking at reallocating the resources currently being used for a secondary nurse and reallocating those resources to make sure that we have a physical presence in each of the large elementary schools. So we'll have additional health assistants. We do need a certified nurse on staff, which we have, and we have had for a long time. We feel that this is a way to provide more people to serve our kids.
Thank you.
Any other discussions? Okay, we'll bring that back then. Next, item B, discuss Sdma family survey.
The district administration team is planning on conducting a survey and using school perceptions as our partner for conducting the survey. And school perceptions does surveys similar to this in other schools across the state and across the nation. They have prepared a sample survey for us, which I've shared with the board. Do board members have any questions, concerns, or suggestions before we move forward with this spring?
Just a question, Joe. Is this an identical survey where they do benchmarking other schools, external, same questions?
Yes.
Good.
Carl covered the first part of my question, but how does this compare to previous surveys we've done as far as like benchmarking to see how we're comparing what direction, what trends we're going in?
We will not have comparable data for a family survey. The other family surveys we've done have been more subject specific and they've been run in-house. Perhaps this is something we could do in the future to get that benchmarking from families. We are planning as well to do a faculty and staff survey in the fall. That's where we'll have our major benchmarking because we've already done that a couple different times over the past several years.
Angie?
Who will have access to the data from the survey? I'm just asking because under the respondent information section, I mean, it would be somewhat easy to derive who was saying what based on the fact that they checked the school, the grade, etc. Like it's not anonymous and confidential, so are you gonna really get valid information from it?
I do think it's gonna be anonymous and confidential. The school perceptions team will put together summary reports that can be shared publicly. Certainly those summary reports would segregate any identifiable data. The district administration team will have access to more specific data, but in terms of anything shared publicly, it will be put together by school perceptions.
Any other questions? Chris?
Do you think And some of the questions that you're asking, they're pretty general, but it would be nice to see how well our families think we're meeting our mission statement. So I'd like to see either the three parts of that mission statement put in there separately, or just how you feel like we're achieving the robust mission that we created for the district. So I'd like to see that addition. And then I know from previous family surveys that they would, or they have put emphasis on finding gifted and talented programs. Sometimes maybe that didn't come up in the data that we get from the school perception survey. So I'd like to see a question regarding gifted and talented programs in the district. So just those two.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item E, discuss modification of the 2021-2022 district calendar.
Similar to last year, the last student day is supposed to be the first Friday in June. If you recall last year, with all the difficulties we had with COVID, we ended school for students one day early to give our staff members additional time to prepare their classrooms, to collaborate about next year's class rosters, all sorts of things that our staff members do at the end of the year. Also, with the challenges earlier in the year with COVID, I do know that it delayed some people's ability to use their personal leave. And this could also provide staff with another opportunity to use personal leave if they haven't used it already. And that could allow teachers to finish on Friday, June 3rd, instead of having to come back on Monday, June 6th. So we are recommending a change to the calendar if that's something the board would like to do.
So if everybody's okay, we'll bring that back at the next meeting for approval. Okay. Item F, policy 361, education material selection and evaluation, first reading.
Based on the discussion from last meeting, some slight modifications were made to this policy. Do board members have any additional changes they would like to see before it gets brought back for approval at the next meeting?
I'd just like to say thanks for including the language.
Okay, Angie?
I read it, it looked good.
Okay, so we'll bring this policy back at the next meeting. Item G, policy 850, advertising and promotion on school premises, first reading.
Same introduction, took the feedback from the board at last meeting, tried to reflect it by updating the policy. It actually was relatively simple in terms of just deleting some language. Please note that I did add in the area around tobacco. I also included nicotine products since the vaping and all that stuff has become much more common since the last time this policy was reviewed. But other than that, I think it reflected the discussion last time. Any other suggestions?
Okay, we'll bring that one back as well. Item H, review extracurricular staff contract requests. Any questions there? Okay, with that, items related to next meeting dates. Our next meeting will be on April 11th. We do have the election on April 5th, and on April 6th, we have a joint PAC board meeting at Turtle Lake for board members to attend if they're interested. So, anything else? Okay, with that, a motion to adjourn. Amy? Second. Chris, is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Stand adjourned.